our water supply is in crisis as our world's population increases. Only 2.5% of water is not salty.
And most of that is locked away in ice caps and glaciers. Can you imagine that only 0.8 of 1% of the total water of the planet is available for use? That is like a drop in a bucket. And the major part of that drop is used for growing food, and then of course it has to be shared between household, industries and other uses. You see, it is a very precious resource whose crisis should not be underestimated. 1/5 of the world's population is without access to safe drinking water, and half of that population is without access to adequate sanitation. Since less than 1% of the total water on the planet is available for use, every effort must be made to curb activities such as illegal logging, quarrying, construction, denuding the land, slash and burn agriculture, planned housing and unplanned housing, industrial waste, domestic waste.
Over the next 25 years, food will be required for another 2 to 3 billion people.
The allocation of water resources is just as important to food production as is the problem of land scarcity. Reuse of non-potable wastewater in agriculture can help communities meet water demands and supply challenges without any known significant health risks. Global warming poses another significant threat to water sources, particularly in small island states, since the projected rise of sea levels may cause saltwater intrusion into groundwater aquifers and further restricting access to potable water. The greatest danger to global food security comes from aquifer depletion. Aquifers are an essential source of water for food production. An aquifer works much like a huge sponge that stores water under the ground. It is porous rock that is below the earth's surface, and when rain falls, it goes through the grass, then through the ground, and is stored in this porous rock. The stored water is then pumped out through water wells, treated for drinking, and distributed through our pipeline system. The Queen's Park Savannah in North Trinidad is an aquifer that supplies water to the city of Port of Spain. In recent years, scientists have become aware of the problems involved with the contamination of groundwater, and once they are polluted, it takes decades or centuries for them to cleanse themselves, so we have to protect our aquifers. The integrated water resource management approach is rooted in 4 principles known as the Dublin Principles, named after the UN Conference on Water Development held in Dublin, Ireland in 1992. There is a fixed amount of water on Earth to meet the needs of life, development, and the environment. Since water sustains life, effective management of water resources demands a holistic approach, linking social and economic development with protection of natural ecosystems. Effective management links land and water uses across the whole of a catchment area or groundwater aquifer.
The importance of protecting vital ecosystems, particularly in the context of integrated water resources management. Islands like Grenada and Trinidad and Tobago, these islands are small island developing states, and therefore we have to look at the whole management of the watersheds and the coastal zone. So when we're looking at managing the island with respect to water, we manage from, as the saying says, from ridge to reef, because everything that happens inside impacts on the coast, and everything that happens on the coast impacts internally. Now, part of the whole thing that governs the watershed management really is linked to the hydrological cycle. And the hydrological cycle has, of course, the whole ecosystem included, because water is part of the environment. And how the water is impacted affects the ecosystem. And we have important parts of this hydrological cycle, like the mangroves, the swamps, which are critical areas to water management because they play roles with respect to the cleansing of your fresh water.
watersheds, or some people call them catchment areas. And if you were to look at them individually, you would notice that in Trinidad and Tobago, a number of these watersheds have mixed activities in them. The upper reaches would be forested, especially in northern parts of Trinidad and also in Tobago. And as you get into the middle and lower reaches of these catchment areas of watershed, then you start to have human activity, development. Because of those human development, in terms of agriculture practices and even built development, then you start to see the effects in the particular watersheds. If you're reliant on aquifers or groundwater sources and you're having a shortfall in rainfall, or the rain is not falling in the areas where it recharges the aquifers, then certainly over time you can see a diminishing of your groundwater sources because it's not being recharged, because the climate change is impacting on where the rain is falling. So it has to be determined where the rain is falling, if it's just recharging the aquifers, or if you are building or doing any sort of development that would prevent the recharging of those important aquifers.
Managing our water resources requires the cooperation of many people, from policymakers in government to communities and individuals in their everyday lives.
In moving forward as a developing country, moving towards development status, there needs to be a balance between economic development and environmental preservation and conservation. We need to ensure that the catchment areas, the watersheds that are demarcated in any island developing states is properly managed. You must strike the balance between how much development you're going to allow in a particular watershed. You cannot allow large percentages of the catchment area to be under built development, because that will have an impact on your recharging of your aquifers and of course the amount of runoff you have to deal with when there's rainfall. So it's all about striking the balance between ensuring that you have a lot of green spaces, that development is well managed and zoned so that you have areas that are for agriculture, areas that are for industrial areas that are for housing developments, and importantly areas that remain under green, the forests, for years to come, so that you would ensure safeguard the present and future generations.
The basic IWRM concept has been extended to incorporate affected groups in decision-making, from farmers, environmentalists, women, and communities, who can all influence and recommend strategies for water resource development and management. We are all stakeholders in this, and so managing water development effectively will ensure long-term sustainable use for future generations.
Right here in our households, we are guilty of putting undue stress on our water supplies. From the chemicals we use in our homes, to leaving the water running before taking a shower, or while brushing our teeth.
By not brushing my teeth with the tap on.
Take short baths.
When I'm in the shower and soaping, I turn it off and then I open it to rinse. Another practice of conserving water is that I soap all my dishes first and then I rinse them. I don't leave the tap running while I'm soaping.
I water the plants with a bucket instead of a hose.
Yes, we do practice water conservation, especially at home a lot. I think that is something that we need to deal with as far as awareness within the country, because we tend to think that because we're surrounded by water we have a lot, but it's different as far as usable water for consumption and the water that we're surrounded by. So we need to be aware of the levels of water within our reservoirs and the way it would affect our flooding, wastage and all of that, the way we deal with wastewater, if we can reuse water as waste, and there are lots of different things that we need to take into consideration, but yes, I think that it's an important topic.
Women especially have an important role to play in protecting the quality of water. Traditionally, men and women have used water in different ways, with men playing a bigger role in the use of water for irrigation and farming, and women using water for cleaning and food preparation, which requires access to an uncontaminated water supply.
In order to reduce poverty or poverty eradication, we need good water supply. So that we need to have, and also that women are at the first level. In other words, when there's no water, it impacts on women first because they still have the responsibility of providing the basic necessities in life and sanitation for cooking, washing, bathing, food. It's women's responsibility. And although we might say in our context that men are now helping, really they help when the water is around. If water goes off, it then becomes women's burden. They then have to manage the problem in a way. So men still don't see it as their responsibility. So in that sense, we need to have women involved at all decision level making for water resources. We were hearing from Paul Hines, who was in Haiti recently working on water resources and water supply to various rural communities, in which he showed a picture of a water pump being placed by men. Huge, massive piece of equipment, which even looking at it, women may be intimidated to use. And found that when he called a meeting, there were only men at the meeting to discuss their problems with water and what the solutions might be. And he insisted that women had to be involved, and so their voices are now being heard in any sort of decision making in that particular instance.
Water has an economic value in all its competing uses and should be recognized as an economic good. Within this principle, it is vital to recognize first the basic right of all human beings to have access to clean water and sanitation at an affordable price. Water has a value as an economic good as well as a social good. Many past failures in water resource management are attributed to the fact that the full value of water has not been recognized and has led to wasteful and environmentally damaging uses of the resource.
There's a value to collect this water. We build dams, reservoirs, and so. Then we have to treat the water. Sometimes the water